welcome to Viewpoint, your perspectives. If you stand by just a minute, turn your radio down. We got to move the coffee around. And we have to see Judy. She doesn't know where she is yet this morning. We'll work it out. Good morning. Oh, yes. We always start with the kudo.
Yes.
This morning, my kudo would go to Lincoln College's campus to a very nice gentleman. Tony Thomas has completed his career of coaching a very successful baseball team out there. Tony and Bridgie are nice people. They raised some nice kids. And so I tip my Lincoln College hat to the direction of Tony Thomas and his dear wife, Bridget. Tony completed a really successful career at Lincoln College campus. Now, he's not going to leave us, but he's got other duties assigned. So we'll have a new coach out there. They won't have as near as much fun with new coaches they did with Tony. So, salute, Tony. Salute. Go right ahead and introduce
Best
our
wishes
guest.
to him. Well, don't you... I thought I was supposed to do this first.
Oh, yes, of course. We'll get on with it.
Get my marching orders here. There is something fun to do Friday night, so heed. It's, again, Lincoln College, and it's called Our Cause is Just, and it's set to premiere this Friday night, the 7th, and it has to do with the Hawes family and letters that were received by that family from their kids who were fighting the war.
The Civil War, that is.
Yes, the Civil War. And it's all on video, and you can go there to the museum. Give me the name of that.
Lincoln College Museum.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where it is. And it's at 6 o'clock.
It's not at the Burton View School.
So it's May 7 at 6 o'clock at the Johnston Center for Performing Arts on the Lincoln College campus. And that should be very interesting. So make a note on your calendar and hope to see you there. And now I'll try.
I actually have a story about that.
Would you do that?
Yeah, if you want.
We have another Thomas boy here.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Bill Thomas.
Let's introduce this Thomas first.
Yes.
Okay.
Conversant with all things worldly.
Well, I actually have a connection to the Hawes letters.
Did you?
That you just referenced. Well, I got invited a few weeks ago. I did a live stream broadcast for Illinois Humanities, and it was a broadcast about, I think it was titled, Lincoln's Last Train Ride. And it was the story of the funeral train that took his body down to Springfield.
Yes.
And they asked me and Ron Keller from Lincoln College and Justin Blandford, who's in charge of historic sites in Springfield. They wanted us to talk about what it was like when the train went through town on May 3rd, 1865. And the museum at Lincoln College has this wonderful letter from Louisa Shores, who was a Hawes, and she described the whole experience. Everybody in town.
Firsthand.
Yes, firsthand. Everybody in town getting up before dawn, lining the tracks. They'd built arches over the tracks. All the school kids there with mourning ribbons on. It's just an amazing letter to read.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's part of the Hawes family.
That it's part of the Hawes family, yes.
And they're from right here in River City.
That's right.
There was a migration of the Hawes family from Atlanta to Sheridan Township. They were over in New Holland because the C.C. Hawes implement and hardware store were over in New Holland. I remember that as a kid.
Okay.
So I'm not sure about at what time that migration took place.
Yeah. But I mean, she tells the whole story of the train arriving and what it looked like, seeing General Sherman and General Grant on the back platform, looking in the windows, seeing the coffin, and then later the train leaves, and she ends the letter later in the day telling her brother, "Oh, Henry, we can hear the cannons down in Springfield at the funeral service."
Really?
How sad. How sad. It's just it's an amazing letter.
Well, my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
You know, woe are us because we don't have the respect and admiration and love for one another that was once had by we people.
We talked a little bit about that during the broadcast and talked about how that event brought the country together. It was such a tragic reason for
Yes.
bringing the country together, but it did nonetheless. Yeah, thousands of people lining the tracks.
Well, that's why Jim and I are so close, because he brought us to those 2 listeners we have out there.
Is that it?
Well, we didn't get around to giving this fella an official introduction. He just kind of morphed in.
Yeah, he bless
Or
his
butted
heart.
his way in, whatever verb you want to use.
Well, at least I said his name out loud.
What was that again?
Well, I guess, you know, we've had you on a couple times, lucky for
happily
us.
so.
And I guess I just kind of think you're a part of it.
Oh, that makes me feel really good.
Bless your
really
heart.
does. Thank you.
And you're conversant with so many things. Since we're talking
No,
about...
I'm only conversant about the things I know.
Well, then you're smarter than I am.
Other than that,
I
Both of
sit
you
here
pick up on that out there. Pick up on that.
I converse about things I know nothing
Well,
about. I'm here, come before you to stand behind
there you
know.
go.
You're really involved with Route 66, which right now is, pardon the expression, a mell of a hess in our part of it. Right here in
Lose your
River City.
license.
This too shall pass, Judy.
Yeah, well, but the city of the big city of Lincoln, the metropolitan area, is kind of a mess too. Yeah, we have street mess.
Oh, that,
Yes.
yes.
We have. But let's talk a little bit about Route 66.
Okay. Well, the interesting thing, we'll make the proper transition. Route 66 was purposefully built to parallel the railroad. The same railroad that Lincoln's body was
Is that
transported
right?
on. Yes. And if you want to go back even farther in time, it also parallels the original Indian trails
Think of that.
the Native Americans used to travel from one place to the next. So the Native Americans figured it out first, and then the railroads realized, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's where we should put the railroads. And then Route 66 just followed in hand.
See one, do one.
Yeah, it's just a nice
Well,
connection.
the Indians have been here for quite a while.
Yeah.
They had
Yeah,
plenty
somebody
of
had to
time
figure it out.
plan a good route.
Yep.
By the way,
Good
they
for
talk
them.
about, how our Indians were treated. We were not very nice to those folks.
No.
We have a terrible history.
No, and I
That's
don't want to go
really
down
why-
too much of a
that's-
rabbit hole, but the book I'm reading right now, I don't know why I picked this book up. It is a history, it's historical fact, but it's a really deep dive into the Pilgrims
Oh.
and Thanksgiving, and it just amazes me what I'm learning about Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims. There were over 90 Indians at that first celebration, and there were about 45 English settlers.
Is that
Yeah, just think about it, because think of the pictures that we see, that we saw in grade school,
Yes.
that they put up on the bulletin board, the standard thing, year after year after year. Not very
Not so.
not very accurate in terms of the real event.
Well, that
So-
goes on every day in broadcast media.
Yeah.
I mean, those people stand up and look in those cameras and just look you right in the eye and lie to you.
I'll justify it because a lot of what we think we know about the Pilgrims was done to make us feel good about the beginning of the country. It was a myth. A lot of it was mythologized in order to. They did have good values and everything, and that they wanted to promote that. But in the process, they lost some of the accuracy of what actually happened.
But it just serves to make us more and more cynical, because you watch the news or you read the history book and you have these preconceived ideas, and the talking heads on the TV,
Yeah.
this station tells you this is the truth and so be it.
You
And the
can believe it
next
if
guy-
Jim Ash says it.
Yes.
I know.
You
Yes.
can
I
buy
think
that.
on that we can all agree.
Unless
Yes.
they,
Yes.
they filter him stuff over the wire that's not so.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right. So what were we supposed to talk about today?
Well, we were going to broach the subject of the Route 66
yes.
commemorations.
Yes.
So do it.
Oh, okay. Well, it has a rather. I don't know who will be 100 first. The road or Bill Gossett?
I'm closing there pretty fast. And Mrs. Gossett, by the way.
And Mrs. Gossett too.
Oh,
okay.
my. Yeah, am I about to get in trouble?
Oh, no.
But if you see her on the street tomorrow, just say 95 and move on.
Oh, tomorrow.
Happy-
oh my
happy
gosh.
birthday to
then
her.
then
Yes.
Jean's.
Happy birthday to her tomorrow.
Let's see what the Route 66's birthday, 100th birthday, is in 2026.
Well, she almost made it.
Well, that's 5 years from now,
Yeah.
or 4 years, I guess, from this year. Yeah, so they're close cousins. Yeah. Anyway, 100 years of this road that, in our opinion, is the most famous road in the United States, if not the world. Will become that hyperbolic.
They even made a movie about it.
Oh, made movies, television shows, songs.
Nat Cole.
Yes, Nat
can hear
King
him,
Cole. Yes. And we have to give due credit to Cindy Troupe. Cindy Troupe was married to Bobby Troupe. Bobby Troupe is the person who wrote
Route 66.
Get Your Kicks on Route 66. But he and Cindy were traveling out to California in order for him to get work, and he decided he wanted to write this song about the road they were traveling on. He could not come up with a good catchphrase, and she's the one that turned to him in the car and said, well, why don't you say Get Your Kicks on Route 66? So she deserves that
She's
credit.
the one who immortalized.
Yes, she definitely immortalized.
And you said her first name?
Cindy, Cinnie.
Cindy.
Uh-huh. Isn't that an interesting name? Yeah.
Well,
She was
I'm
left-handed.
glad that they chose. My maiden name is Nesseth. My
Okay.
given name is Judith. So I was Judith Nesseth, which wasn't too fancy.
That was easy to say if you lisp well enough while you were in fine shape.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
one day my father
Commercial.
was lamenting the fact that his name, he said, I don't know why my parents named me Kenneth with a last name like Nesseth. And I said, probably for the same reason my parents named me Judith with a last name like Nesseth. But Cindy, now that's different.
Now, here, Bill, there's a man that you sat down with over a cup of coffee or a beer and really enjoyed your two with Kenneth, her dad.
K.O., he had opinion on it, whatever it was.
He shot him straight from the hip.
You
Okay.
betcha.
And if you didn't like it, tough rocks.
Called a spade, that boy.
So, I never knew until this very moment this morning that the founders of the old folks grade out 66 to go along parallel with the GM&O or the Baltimore and Ohio, which all became Amtrak from Chicago to
Yep.
St. Louis.
Uh-huh.
Those are the days, Judith, when the train would go through so fast they wouldn't stop at Atlanta or Lincoln for that matter. They'd throw the mail off and pick it up.
Yeah.
And every once in a while
Catch it with the hook.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
But every once in a while, a mail sack they threw off would bounce back underneath the trucks, and you'd have mail from here to Pontiac. That's a fact.
That's good.
Inevitable was going to happen.
Yep.
Oh,
It
dear.
bounced the wrong way and get back underneath the train, and you had from Atlanta to Pontiac, maybe even Joliet. We had some cars.
Oh, dear.
Billy, the business of trying to improve small towns is a tough road. And tell us a little bit about what you're doing here to kind of put a little polish on. But before we better do that, do you suppose we better think in terms of our yes, all right. We always go through about half the show, and remember, we do have commercials that we need to. We have, believe it or not, we have sponsors that sponsor all this stuff. So go right ahead, James. Right back live in the studio this morning here. The program is Viewpoint, of course, that program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. One of you go to the refrigerator and get me another drink, will you, please? And the others stay tight so you don't lose the frequency. Our guest this morning, Bill Thomas. We're glad Bill Thomas came to Atlanta. I first knew Mr. Thomas because he was the principal of the school where my grandchildren were going in Atlanta grade school. And that was a good thing.
Yes, it was. It was a good experience.
Yeah, I'm very happy for that experience. Yeah. And Bill's kind of a mover and somewhat of a shaker here in the community. Vitally interested, and I'm serious about this. I'm not trying to be facetious at all. Vitally interested in the well-being of his adopted community. And
Yes.
By the way, he's got I'm not going to brag about his daughter, who's a very smart nurse. Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Bill.
You were asking me about
66.
66 and the struggle lots of small towns have staying alive.
Amen.
Yeah. We take that very seriously, and by we, I mean this organization that I'm chairman of. It's called the Route 66 Road Ahead Partnership, and it's actually a group of representatives from each of the 8 states through which Route 66 runs, and we all work together to promote, preserve, and economically develop the road, okay? Because there are, as you probably know, thousands and thousands of people who come specifically to travel it from the U.S. and especially from all over the globe.
One of the things that this doggone COVID business has done is had an immediate and a serious impact on tourism.
Yes.
And a little town like Lincoln and Atlanta, we count on a tourist dollar a lot.
Yes.
And I'm not being facetious about this at all. It's a serious loss to these small town communities up and down 66, 55, and other.
Our organization recognized that, Bill, and one of the things we did, we started something, well, a person gave me some very good advice. We were thinking about, there are lots of businesses that they're closing down. They can't make it there because the travelers just aren't there. What can the Road Ahead do? And we work with a fundraising firm, and the woman who runs it said, well, if you really want to accomplish something, you need to get together a group of women and give them a purpose, and they'll achieve it. So I said, okay, what's your idea? And she said, well, we talked through it, and we came up with the idea of, we now have something called the Route 66 Extraordinary Women Program.
That's an interesting concept.
It's a very interesting concept. We recruited 3, 4, 5 women from each of the 8 states to form a national task force, and we decided we're going to raise money, and then we're going to turn around and give that out as grants to women-owned businesses along Route 66, because they're really struggling.
Yes, they
So
are.
I'm thrilled to announce we've raised enough money to do the first round of the grant program. We've had $10,000. We got applications in. They were due last Friday. We're reviewing them now. And a week from Friday, we'll announce $10,000 worth of grants to women who own businesses along Route 66. Yep.
But see what an interesting, somebody had an idea and it clicked back there in their little cranial matter.
Yep.
And now we have the fruition of that idea.
Go ahead, Judy.
I'd like to digress and go back to what you were talking about a moment ago off air about the business of promoting Route 66 and how they went about it any number of years ago, and some of the engineering feats or defeats that were employed to make it viable. Talk about that history. I think
You want
that's
to talk
the
about
berries.
the big ditch? Is
Yeah,
that what
the
you want?
big ditch. You betcha.
It's loosely.
They hired a bargain
It's
engineering
loosely connected
firm.
to Route 66 because it parallels it, but if anybody knows the geography of Atlanta, we sit up on a hill, on a moraine. And when they built the railroad from Lincoln up to Atlanta, they soon discovered, because it was a straight track, it's really kind of hard to get these trains up this hill. So they hired an engineer back in the early 1900s, and they said, cut a ditch. and lower the grade of this track. And if they had completed the project, there would have been a 30-foot deep ditch along First Street in downtown Atlanta.
Isn't that special?
Thank goodness there was a disagreement between the railroad and the city, and the project didn't move forward.
Yeah.
But if you want an example of what it would have looked like, travel on up 66 to Shirley, Illinois, just north of McLean, just south of Bloomington, and you can see they dug a ditch there too, and it's 30 foot deep, and there's a huge bridge over it. And I just would not have wanted that in the downtown of our community.
Did you mention the fact that they had a pushing engine for the train?
Their first solution before they come up with the ditch idea was they just brought another engine up and they pulled and they pushed trains up that hill. But if you ride Amtrak now, you can watch. You come very close, well, right about here to where the station is, and then the track curves and veers to the west and then comes back through town. And that's because it's missing the worst part of the hill that they would normally have had to go up.
That's interesting because it's not even visible now, hardly.
No, it isn't.
It's
isn't
just there.
Yeah. But in the wintertime, especially when the trees and the shrubs along where the track was, you can see how high they built the ramp before they even got to the ditch. It's a good 20 feet tall. So it was quite an engineering feat. And just like 66, when it was first built, it was real curvy too, because it was much easier to follow the contours of the land than it was to cut through something. So,
but that route was originally the Indians' pathway.
Yes. Folks don't know this, but the Native Americans discovered first and figured out the best paths for getting from point A to point B, and then when the railroads came along, they followed the same paths, and then when Route 66 was built, it was built parallel to the railroad. So you've got history within like 20 feet of each other, all parallel, running all the way across the country.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit for your time. I know you're a lot older, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. Every day I'm older. None of us get any younger. So what are your current plans for your commission other than honoring the women?
Helping women out. The Women's Initiative is actually what we're referring to as one of the first birthday presents we want to give to Route 66. And we're going to be giving it presents over the course of the next 5 years, leading up to the centennial year in 2026. We're doing that because we want to make sure that there's a huge celebration in the country, because this is a significant anniversary. The 100th of anything is a big deal, but we want to make it meaningful. So we're calling it a party with a purpose. Okay? And our purpose is, let's help promote, let's help preserve, and let's help economically develop all the towns along 66.
How many Lincoln and Atlanta's counterparts
do
you suppose there'd be on that route?
They're all over. The majority of the towns along 66 are less than 20,000 people, and the many of them are less than 5,000 people. You've got your Albuquerques, your St. Louis, Tulsa, but by and large, the majority of them are small, and they all got dramatically hurt when the interstate came in.
Yes.
Okay, because
bypassed the community.
Bypassed it. Town after town, you talk to the people and they say it was like turning the spigot off on a tap of water. There were 900 cars a day through here one day.
Yeah.
The next day when the interstate was open, there were 3.
Yeah.
That dramatic a difference.
Now, how do you reconcile these philosophies? In the first place, you want things to be expedited, okay? But you lose a lot, you kill a lot in that effort.
Judy, I couldn't agree with you more, and it's such a tension. Efficiency in the name of progress is not, in my opinion, always good. And the interstate highway system and its impact on the downtowns of all these small communities is a prime example. But it's come back around. In the 1920s, when 66 was first developed, I think I've mentioned this here before. Maybe Jim knows, maybe he doesn't. At one time, there were 7 gas stations in Atlanta operating at the same time, Jim, from the north end to the south end. That's how busy that road was. 7 gas stations. 7. And then they built the bypass around Atlanta. That's why Turner's went out to the east side, because that's where the traffic was. Okay? And then the interstate came. So it hurt for a long time, but then in the late 1980s, early 1990s, people all of a sudden got interested in the road again in sort of a nostalgic fashion, and people began to travel it, and then they began to recognize, oh, maybe it's not going to bring us day-to-day commercial traffic, but it will attract tourists, and tourists equals money. So the towns that have recognized, if we can bring tourists to our community and give them things to do so they spend time in town, that will increase the probability that they spend money. That's the formula. Time equals money. More time spent equals more money spent.
Sure. Makes sense.
Yep.
Mr. Thomas, this the committee with whom you work, they are formed from where to where?
Okay, all the way across the country. Each state has a state Route 66 association. Okay, actually, I have to tell the truth. There are 8 states. Sometimes these groups of people don't always play well together. It's like,
shocking.
Yeah, shocking. If you can imagine people just not naturally playing well together. So there are 8 states, 8 states that the road runs through, but there are 9 state Route 66 associations, because 2 cousins in Kansas, where there's only 12 miles of Route 66, don't get along. So they have 2 state associations in Kansas. That's just an example. Yeah. But for our purposes, our organization was created to bring all these people together and get them to work.
This is the far-reaching group.
Yes, it is.
Then you have regional meetings, and then we have one big meeting a year or something like that?
4 times a year. 3 times a year we're on the phone. Our board is from across the country. And then once a year we get together in person. And right now our chief goal is, oh my gosh, we have this huge party with a purpose that we have to carry out. So all of our efforts are going into leveraging that and getting ready for it.
It's interesting you mentioned the ladies that get involved. You know, fraternal orders and all this business. A bunch of guys didn't want the ladies to join at the Elks. That was a fraternal order. Well, the truth of the matter is, if we didn't have the ladies out there, some of that stuff wouldn't get done at all.
I couldn't agree with you more, Bill.
It's just a statement of fact.
There's power in the sisterhood.
Yeah, exactly.
There is, and lots of good ideas.
I'm intrigued by this entrepreneurial business for women. You mentioned that somebody is going to receive a largesse of some sort.
Yes.
Tell us how that works.
We structured the program so that if you owned a business or an attraction that was directly located on 66, and that could involve multiple places in the same community, because as you know, there are different alignments of Route 66 through even Lincoln.
Yes, right.
Okay? So as long as your business was located on an alignment of 66, you could apply for up to $2,500 for anything that you needed to help your business. So we're in the process now of reviewing grant applications where people need help hooking up a sewer line to their restaurant.
Important.
That's very important, because they've been on a septic tank for years and years. This is this place out in Adrian, Texas, that is called the Midpoint Cafe, and they need help. We've gotten applications from 2 African American women who run a place down on 66 in Springfield, Illinois, that is dedicated to telling the story of the African American experiences on Route 66, which is fascinating. Just a whole wide variety of grant applications. And like I say, we're going through them now and evaluating them, and we'll give out $10,000. And then we'll keep raising money so we can do another round for the program.
Just give us a little example of the things that the two ladies that you just mentioned in Springfield are doing.
One of the foremost things, the story of women, the story of blacks and African Americans, the story of Hispanics, and the story of Native Americans on Route 66 is literally unknown.
Really?
But they're vitally important to the road. Let's talk about the African Americans. Do you know what I'm talking about if I talk about the Green Book?
No.
Do you, Jim? Okay, and that's not surprising because we're all Caucasian. But during the era of segregation, if you were black and you wanted to travel from one place to the next, your options in terms of where you could eat, where you could buy gas, and where you could spend the night were severely limited because it would be whites only.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's black Americans literally loaded up the car with food and they would spend the night along the road. They would go to the bathroom in the woods because the options of where you could stop
Were not
were
there.
just so limited. There was a postman in New York City who was African American. His name was Mr. Green. And he decided to create a directory, and he called it the Green Book. And it was a directory of safe places that would accommodate African Americans all throughout the country, but it included places along Route 66. So we want to tell that story because
Well,
it's a
yes.
fascinating story. And there are several Green Book sites down in Springfield, boarding houses, a couple restaurants that would serve African Americans, and these two women in Springfield are dedicated to telling that and other stories.
How important.
How very important.
Yeah, because we have a tendency to the ostrich syndrome. You put your head in the sand and no, that didn't happen. That,
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that. Well, the fact of the matter is, history is replete with
Yes.
episodes. Now, for instance, the other day I watched that wonderful Ken Burns.
Oh, yeah.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
he's your hero, Bud.
Yeah, well,
he's incredible.
He really is incredible. But it had the baseball players traveling, and they experienced the same thing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, traveling with a white team, but no, you can't stay at this hotel with
Yeah.
the rest of these guys. And so the Green Book, and the Green Book was published for a couple decades at least.
But
And
how important.
how very important. You can go online now and they've digitized copies of the Green Book, and you can actually look up your town to see if there were any sites over the years. Because it changed, because
Yeah.
in 20, 30 years,
Oh, yeah.
things change, yeah. But
Is Burton View mentioned in that?
Burton View, I don't think had a reference. Lawndale, I don't think either one.
I remember, by the way, seriously, I was a kid in the 30s, and they put Route 10 in, and I can even tell you the name of the contractor that built that road. It
Yep.
was Joyce Brothers Construction. I
Yep.
can't remember my own name in the morning, but I can remember that.
Yep,
And
yep.
I remember when Illinois put that they put that Route 10 through. And that was a big deal.
There are some wonderful photographs up in Atlanta thanks to Betty McClellan, who was a charter member of the Illinois Route 66 Association. Dear, dear woman in our community. I believe it was her uncle, Mr. Irvin. Does that name ring any bells with you, Jim?
Irvin, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Irvin. Mr. Irvin was the foreman of the construction crew that used mules and horses to grade the roadbed and lay Route 66 through Logan County,
Oh, my.
including Atlanta. And God love them, that family took pictures. So we actually have photographs of mule teams grading the bed in order to prepare it for the concrete that was laid that became Route 66.
Now think about that for just a moment.
Yeah,
Think
think about that.
How long it would take to get the road graded from Lincoln to Atlanta.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you
With
didn't do that.
mules.
You didn't
And
do
think
that.
about the fact that before 66 was built, if you lived in Atlanta, you drove to one end of Arch Street or the other, and the street just stopped. There was no road before that because you just got on the train or you got on your horse
Yeah.
and took off across the countryside. We don't stop to think
That
about
was
that.
the end of the road.
Yeah, that was literally the end of the road. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? You mentioned, thank goodness, they took pictures. I bet today we witnessed things, and we're grateful that we got to be there, and we're grateful that we got to participate. But did we ever take pictures? Someday, 100 years from now, they might be interested in what we did.
I can guarantee you there will be some of us history nerds that are very interested in those pictures. Yes. We have a gentleman in Atlanta who happens to be Betty McClellan's brother, Larry Brandt, who is dedicated to making sure he takes pictures of things. He's taking pictures of the new construction at the school site because they're adding a new gym at the school. Yeah. I don't know if you knew this, Jim, but back in, I think it was like 2006, when we still had Paul Adams, one of our treasurers in town, we worked with Paul and we decided to do a complete survey of every house and building in town. Photographic survey. Larry helped out with that project. Paul helped out with that project. And you can now go to the Atlanta Museum and by street, they're cataloged. Okay, here are all of the houses on this street. Here are all of the buildings, photographs. Because 100 years from now, people are going to want to know. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting in Lincoln, and I'm sure in Atlanta and many, many, many towns. When you live in a house, like I just moved from for 50 years, people will tell you, oh yes, I know, somebody built that house, and then they'll tell you about the next door neighbor and who built that house. And it's so interesting. In a city, nobody asks, nobody tells, nobody cares.
Yeah. Thank goodness people took loads of pictures and then movies of Route 66 when they traveled it, because we have a pretty darn good historic record. So as we're trying to preserve things now along the road, we can go back and look at all of that stuff. And that's a key. That's a key to economic development. Figure out how to preserve the structures that you have. And they may not be used for exactly what they were originally designed, but if you preserve them and maintain their historic architecture, people like that, and that becomes an attraction to your community. So that's one of the ways we're doing it along 66.
648-5510. We fooled around out here, and old Bill gets involved.
Are they going to give us another 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
I just get so involved in listening, and I forget to remind those folks out there listening, both of you, pay attention now.
Yeah.
648-5510. Our guest this morning, William Thomas, and a friend of mine of long standing. I don't have any old friends anymore. Bill has been very involved in community development, done a lot in and for and around Atlanta, and we're happy that he gave us his time to come and spend some time with us this morning, talk about the history, some of and also perhaps some of the future. That's just around the corner, folks, if you hadn't noticed.
Yes, it is. It's creeping up on us. Jim knows who Sue McCown was in Atlanta.
Yeah, I know that name.
Okay, I'm going to tell a story on Sue McCown that relates to Route 66. Sue McCown was one of the original, what they called powder puff girls. Have you ever heard that phrase? Okay, well, they were a little, let's just say notorious might be a phrase, a word to use for them. Good friends who were a little ornery, okay, as my grandmother would have
spells
said.
it out.
Ornery, yes. 66 was built, but like many roads, before they opened it up to traffic, they sort of blocked it off. It wasn't officially ready for people to travel yet. Sue McCown and a couple of her friends, I think they borrowed one of their dad's cars and moved the barricades and took a jaunt down 66 before it was open to the public. Yes, and that is documented. That is documented. Yeah.
Well, more power.
Yeah, more power to it. Well, it was intriguing. Brand new, nice concrete highway, hard road, as we say.
The hard
in
road.
These parts, the
I
hard
love
road.
that term.
Me too.
The hard
A
road.
girl my heart would desire. Just have the temerity to go ahead and follow through with her.
Yeah.
Her daughter, whose name I'm not remembering now, or maybe
Karen or Ann.
okay, it's regardless. Yeah, I'm talking about Sue McCown, or maybe it's a relative. Okay, because neither of those names.
He's
is
just
ringing a
more
bell.
than just an engineer.
Right, he's a real resource himself.
Oh,
Yes.
There you go.
She also this person that was telling me stories about Sue, when she was much later in her life, maybe 80s plus, she decided to get in the car again with some friends, and they took off on a drive. We're going about 80 some miles an hour. The police stopped them and wanted to know what, and he comes up to the car and he's a little shocked to see these senior ladies in the car doing 80 plus. She goes, well, I was told that every once in a while I just needed to take it out and blow the feathers out of the engine.
And so she did. Oh, bless her heart.
I don't know if that was on 66 or not, but I love that.
You know, the description of travel has changed dramatically in even a generation. We used to travel to see this and to see that. Now it's just hustle to get to point B.
It is, except along Route 66, and that's one of the things that attracts people to it, because it purposefully promotes itself as it's not a cookie cutter experience. You're not going to find a McDonald's on every corner. You're going to find real small town cafes and real shops run by mom and pop people. Another huge effort we're doing is we have something called the Vintage Motel Task Force. We're working very hard to save many of these vintage motels that were along Route 66. The kind of place my parents had us stay when we piled in the 65 Chevy Bel Air and drove to Disneyland in 1965 and stayed at what we thought were just fabulous, but they were tiny motels that had a swimming pool, and it was such a thrill.
That was the collecting point, the swimming pool.
Oh yes, yeah. You couldn't stop at the kids who didn't have a pool, because how are you going to keep them entertained? Yeah.
Well, of course, the forerunners of motels or such, they had very, very, very modest wooden frame shacks. For want of a better word, shacks is probably not the exact word.
Cabins.
But
Cabins.
very simple cabins.
Yes.
Exactly. And we had right down, we called Bailey's Cabins, right at the foot of Route 66, right down next to the cemetery going south on
Bill, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Bailey's Cabins.
You're going to have to take me and show me where that spot was, because Route 66 is the reason we have motels.
Yeah.
Because the people that built those cabins finally figured out, well, rather than build a whole bunch of separate ones and all that extra lumber, if you put them close enough together, you can put a roof over all of them, and then that became
a motel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We also, Route 66, developed the concept of the gas station. There were not gas stations before Route 66.
Well, how did you get gas?
Gas pumps were around, but there was one in front of Gilbert's True Value hardware store. There was one in front of where the Colaw's garage was. They were just scattered all over. Nobody had thought, well, build a separate facility that is just for gas and servicing cars, because the demand wasn't that great. But as the demand went up, we need a separate facility. So what I want us to do now is, okay, we developed the concept of the gas station. Let's do that with EV charging stations along Route 66 now, because that's the next infrastructure we're going to
Judith
need.
K., do you know where the name gas pump came from?
Ooh, no. I don't. Tell us.
The derivation of gas.
No.
Well, in those days, the bulk, the wholesaler would bring and drop the gasoline into tanks in the ground, and the station operator, when you drive up there, he'd come out and he'd pump the gas from the ground up to above in the container, and then it gravity fed into your tank.
That's why the gas pumps used to have probably just a reconstruction of the business of this globe.
Yes, you could see where the gas was pumped up there to tell how much.
Who'd have thought?
Well, Judith K., once again, we've run out of time. We brought Mr. Thomas, didn't offer him a coffee, didn't offer him a beer or a Bloody Mary or anything. We just picked his brain. Bill, thank you very much for spending time with us.
It's my pleasure.
It's a joy to have you with us
my pleasure.
always.